Hello, my friends. Today we'll be covering the DNA results, predicted phenotype traits, and G25 results of an Eastern hunter-gatherer from Sidyelkina in Samarskaya Oblast in central Russia. It is located right. This village is located right on the border of Samarskaya Oblast in Tataria. I think I mentioned that in my previous videos. I want to remind you this is part 4 to my 12-part series on Eastern hunter-gatherers from Sidyelkina. I'm gonna cover all of the high-quality genomes from this region who belong to Eastern hunter-gatherers who lived in this region. I want to remind you that Eastern hunter-gatherers are the result of a mixture between upper Paleolithic populations of Europe with populations of Siberia. So let's look at what this individual scores with G25. This individual is getting modeled as a mixture of Afontovagra-3, which is the population of Siberia that I mentioned, ancient North Eurasian plus Western hunter-gatherer, and there is a tiny bit of a Georgian hunter-gatherer, Caucasian hunter-gatherer admixture. You can see he is scoring 1.8% Caucasian hunter-gatherer admixture. This is actually much less than all the other Eastern hunter-gatherers from this location, from this village. So, in regards to this individual, we can say that this person is pretty much just a mixture of ancient North Eurasian plus Western hunter-gatherer. We cannot say that in regards to the other genomes from Sidyelkina. The other genomes from Sidyelkina are scoring 4 or 5% Georgian CHG. In this case, he's scoring much less of the Caucasus component, so there's a lot less southern admixture in this genome. Now, it's a male, unlike the other samples I've shown so far, so he's actually has a very interesting haplogroup. His Y-DNA is Q1. Q1 is a lineage that's very common for Native Americans, so I guess there is something that this individual has in common with Native Americans. Actually, this lineage is not very common for Europeans today, and his mitochondrial lineage is very common for Europeans. It is U5A2. U5A is a very hunter-gatherer European lineage that is still quite prevalent in Europe. So let's go ahead and see what he scores with Nashokot calculator. Let's see what he looks like, what his phenotype is. And it looks like he has got brown eye color. Dark brown eyes are also quite possible at 43% likelihood. He does not have green eyes or blue with amber center or blue eyes, so he definitely doesn't have any sort of light eye color. There is a 9% likelihood of hazel eyes, but really that's not very significant. So in reality, he most likely has brown eye color. Brown or dark brown eyes, pretty much, yeah. So he's quite dark, a lot darker than most modern Europeans. For hair color likelihood distribution, he most likely has black hair. Once again, much darker than most Europeans. And for skin color likelihood distribution, it looks like he's scoring between light brown and olive skin. So somewhere between light brown and olive skin. Based on this phenotype prediction, I would say he looks quite Iranian. And for hair texture, he's actually scoring wavy or curly hair. Definitely not kinky hair. He's scoring below 1% likelihood of kinky hair, but he's scoring quite a lot for wavy and curly hair. And this is where he differs from the other Eastern hunter-gatherers, because I remember the other 3 genomes that I've made videos on, which, by the way, you should watch. You should definitely watch the other 3 videos I've made, not because it brings me revenue, but also because of that, but also because they're very interesting and you will probably enjoy them. But he's actually scoring wavy and curly hair, and Eastern hunter-gatherers, I noticed a pattern, they mostly score straight hair with my tool, which is definitely very, very interesting. For nose shape, he is scoring snub-shaped nose. Okay, no surprises here. All the Eastern hunter-gatherers I've seen thus far have been scoring snub-shaped nose. And let's see what he's got for coloring-related variants. He does not have blue haplotype 3, also does not have blue haplotype 2, so he's definitely got dark color of everything, eyes, hair, skin. Because no BH2, no BH3, you're going to be quite dark. He does have BH1, but it doesn't mean much because a lot of like Koreans and Japanese and like Australian natives do as well. So it's not surprising for a Eurasian to have BH1. Nonetheless, he does have blue haplotype 1. Okay. He does have the light skin variants in SLC 24A5, which is really cool to see. He does not have any light color variants in SLC 45A2. Excuse me. So no light color variants here. Okay. And no light color variants in this variation of Kitoji, which is very, very, very interesting. I do remember seeing a sample from Sidyelkina. I think it was the last woman I analyzed, the third sample, who had light color variant here. And he does have one light color variant in this variation of MC1R, which sort of predisposes him to have ginger hair. Let's scroll up a little bit and compare what he scores for ginger hair versus blonde. Yes, he does actually score much higher for ginger versus blonde, but it doesn't matter because both of them are still way below 1%, so it doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so let's close that and let's see the phenotype oracle. Let's see what phenotypes he resembles the most. And it looks like the phenotypes that he resembles the most are this, which is a phenotype that various European hunter-gatherers tend to score. It's mostly Western hunter-gatherers, but I suppose it makes sense for an Eastern hunter-gatherer to score it as well, followed by this, which makes sense as well. I totally can see an Eastern hunter-gatherer looking like this, followed by this, which also makes a lot of sense. People look at phenotypes in the ethnic connotation. They look at the phenotype and they say, "Oh, this looks Moroccan. It couldn't be an Eastern hunter-gatherer." But you can't look at it with the ethnic connotation because the ethnicity that's Moroccan did not exist in the Mesolithic period, right? It's in the Mesolithic period. None of these ethnicities existed, so you can't look at these phenotypes in the Mesolithic period and compare them to modern ethnicities. It doesn't work this way. So I can totally see this Eastern hunter-gatherer looking like any of these three people. It definitely makes sense to me. And let's look at the phenotype oracle. Okay, the closest mixture is a mixture of 50% this plus 50% that. Pretty cool. The second closest mixture is a mixture of 50% this. So quite dark for sure. Definitely darker than like most modern people from this region. Like look at this region right here, Sizelkino, right? Yeah, this region in central Russia. Where I'm from is quite close to this region. I don't look this dark. I don't really have any relatives that look this dark. Maybe on my dad's side, but they're not from this region. They're from like here. So I mean, you know, there's not that many Russians who look as dark as this individual is, and but this is very typical for Mesolithic hunter-gatherers from Sidelkino. Like it compared to other hunter-gatherers from this region, this person isn't even dark at all, right? But compared to modern inhabitants who live here, he is very, very, very swarthy. So there's this pattern of Europeans getting lighter and lighter over time, and that's what I'm trying to drill into your head with these videos. Okay, let's go ahead and see what he scores for the biomarkers panel. Okay, for the biomarkers panel, he is scoring above average for the level of vitamin D. Okay, quite good. That's definitely really good to see. He's scoring below average level of LDL cholesterol, very, very good. Average for HDL cholesterol, also very good. So quite healthy. Above average for level of glucose, okay. Above average for hemoglobin, okay. Average for blood pressure, okay. Below average for level of iron in the blood, so he does not have hemochromatosis, okay. Average for sex hormone binding globulin, average for red blood cell count in blood, slightly below average for telomere length, so he's got some predisposition to shorter lifespan, and above average for height. Very, very interesting number here, 0.666. Very, very interesting number, but above average predisposition to height. All right, so he's got slightly taller height. Definitely pretty cool. Okay, let's close that and let's see the polygenic risk scores. And I'm just going to ignore everything that's average. So it looks like he does not have any risk factors for hemoglobin E disease. It looks like he's got low odds for migraine. We're going to skip all that. Very low odds for gout. Wow. So he's very protected from gout. That's really cool to see. That might be the lowest score I've seen anybody score this far. That's crazy. That is actually crazy. Okay. I'm going to skip everything that's average. I don't really want to talk about that. High score for cataracts. Okay. Very low score for age-related macular degeneration, really cool, and very high score for arthritis. So he's got to watch out for arthritis. Kind of high for epilepsy. Kind of high for vitiligo. Vitiligo is not really a white man's disease. Vitiligo is more of a sub-Saharan African or East Asian. It's not really a white people kind of illness. Above average for male pattern hair loss, which is kind of typical for Europeans or West Eurasians in general to score higher for male pattern hair loss. Okay, he's got average also for unipolar depression, so slightly above average predisposition to unipolar depression. Average for bipolar type 1, average for schizophrenia, above average for type 2 diabetes, and average for type 1 diabetes. And he's got very high predisposition to Alzheimer's. So what do we have here? We have predisposition to Alzheimer's. We have predisposition to what was it? It was I can't even remember. I can't even remember. Damn. Dang. Rheumatoid arthritis, yes. Rheumatoid arthritis, and the other one was Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's and rheumatoid arthritis. I gotta try to keep this in my head. All right. And he's got below average predisposition to multiple sclerosis. All right, pretty cool. Okay. Rheumatoid arthritis and Alzheimer's are what he's predisposed to. And below average odds for multiple sclerosis. So based on him having very below average odds for multiple sclerosis, that means he's probably got pretty good score for the HLA gene panel. That already tells me pretty good stuff about his results. Let's see the lupus result. Hold on. Lupus should be in the top here. I haven't looked at this such a long time. Yeah, lupus is average actually. So I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, a little bit later. Okay. Does he have any rare conditions? Any rare risk variance for any rare conditions? No risk variance for celiac disease. No risk variance for that. For Crohn's disease, he's got 4 risk variants here, but none of them are marked as important, so that's pretty good. No risk variance for anything here. No risk variance here. No risk variance here. Allergies, he's got 8 risk variants at 24 total, which is pretty typical. It's exactly 1/3, so that's exactly typical, exactly common. No risk variance for FHC. He's got 2 common risk variants for irritable bowel syndrome, which is pretty typical. No risk variance here, no risk variance anywhere. Pretty much no risk variance anywhere here, so that's pretty cool. He does have 2 uncommon risk variants for Hirschsprung disease, so that is kind of concerning, but I don't know, it might be a miscall. Actually, it probably isn't. It probably isn't, to be honest, because when it's a miscall, it usually is going to be heterozygous. It's going to be a heterozygous call. In this case, it's a homozygous call, so it's probably not even a miscall. So yeah, this is a little bit concerning, but whatever. Let's close that. Let's go through the monogenic traits and let's see what he scores for that. So it looks like he's got a predisposition to warrior phenotype, so definitely slower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels. Based on the genotype in COMT, MAOA, and MAOB, he's got a predisposition to being a warrior. Very European phenotype to have. So essentially, warrior versus warrior, the dichotomy here is that warrior has higher activity of the COMT and MAOA enzymes, which break down dopamine, so they have lower dopamine levels in the brain. And the warrior have lower activity of these enzymes that break down dopamine, so they have higher levels of dopamine in the brain. And having higher levels of dopamine in the brain is a very European thing because it has some connotations with increased creativity, increased ability to concentrate in low stress conditions, but also decreased ability to function in high stress environments. That's why it's a warrior phenotype. So this individual has a warrior phenotype, definitely very cool. For DRD2, he's got higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain, which is not very European and also leads to increased odds for such conditions as schizophrenia and bipolar. And for levels of 5-HT and serotonin, it looks like he's got a predisposition to lower or intermediate levels of 5-HT and serotonin, which leads to increased odds of such conditions as depression and anxiety. All right. Doesn't have dwarfism. Pretty cool. All right. He's also a carrier of a rare allele associated with longer sleep duration, which is definitely really cool to see. For autism section, looks like he's got intermediate odds of autism. Definitely really cool here as well. Okay. For lactose persistence, looks like he's scoring intermediate odds of lactose persistence, and he's got all these genotypes for not having lactose persistence mutation, but he does have one variant for European lactose persistence. However, I think this one variant isn't really enough to guarantee him being lactose persistent. So despite him having this one variant, he is still predicted to be most likely intermediate odds of lactose persistence with my tool. It is what it is. If he had one more variant, it would probably predict him to be lactose persistent for sure, but he only has one out of 8, so it is what it is. For OXTR and empathy gene, he is scoring average level of empathy based on these 3 SNPs. He's got an average or a higher level of empathy. For diabetes, remember he was scoring higher for the level of both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. For hemochromatosis, no risk variant for hemochromatosis in C282Y, pretty good. Okay, for cardiovascular disease panel, he's got a predisposition to lower odds of cardiovascular issues, pretty good to see here. We're going to skip that. For facial morphology panel, it looks like he's got European genotype in this variation of EDAR, but one European EDAR allele in this variation of EDAR. Definitely very interesting. So heterozygous genotype in this variation of EDAR, with one European and one non-European allele. Okay. He's got a genotype for shorter mid-face length, genotype for protruding nasal bridge, genotype for intermediate nose size, genotype for nose pointing up, and genotype for two genotypes for slightly thinner eyebrows. Definitely pretty cool hair. For vitiligo, I remember he was scoring high for the risk of vitiligo, and now I see why. He's got two risk variants for vitiligo in both the HLA variants that have to do with the vitiligo. So we can actually probably expect a high probability um, risk with the HLA gene panel as well. This will definitely be very cool to see. Actually, let's scroll up a little bit and see for diabetes. Does he have the risk variants in HLA for diabetes? No. I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell. We'll find out. We will find out. Oh, look what I found. He carries the micropenis mutation. Wow. Cool, cool, cool. So he carries the micropenis mutation. That's really cool. That's really cool. Now, of course, in my opinion, this is not. I think I will include this in the thumbnail, actually. This is thumbnail worthy. Yeah, this goes in the thumbnail. But I know at this point I've seen this so many times with the samples I've analyzed. This is probably the fault of the genotyping and not the actual genotype of the human. So this is a genotyping error. So don't take it too seriously. But it's funny though. It's funny though. It says micropenis mutation. It's funny. Yeah, definitely very humorous. He's got one variant for increased pain sensitivity in SCN9A, and he's not an Asian flusher. Okay. All right. For SCN9A gene panel, he's got one risk variant for pain hypersensitivity out of 4 total. Pretty good. Okay, no risk variants for familiar Mediterranean fever. No risk variants for albinism. Pretty good. For MTHFR, he's got one risk variant for decreased efficiency processing folic acid, but no other risk variants in the gene. So we can probably expect to see some increased odds for increased homocysteine levels for the homocysteine panel because of this. But I'm not going to make any promises because there's a lot of other factors that play into this panel. For alcoholism panel, he's scoring way above average for the odds for alcoholism, definitely playing into the stereotype that Russians are alcoholics. Even though this person is far from a Russian, he is from Russia, and probably if this person wasn't exposed to alcohol, he would be very likely to be addicted to it very quickly. He's got some genotypes that protect from testicular cancer, which is really cool. I didn't talk about this when I was talking about the. Oh man, I should have talked about that. Whatever, doesn't matter. Does not matter. For leukemia panel, no risk variants for leukemia in NQ01. Oh, that's really good. So he's definitely quite protected from leukemia. For rare disease and traits panel, let's see that. What rare disease does he have? No holoprosencephaly. Let's see. He's got a risk for ankylosing spondylitis, but it sounds really scary when you look at it. 20 times increased risk, but it's really not that scary. It's pretty common. Like a lot of people have this type of genotype, so it's not really scary whatsoever. He's got a genotype that increases the odds of rheumatoid arthritis, and we already know that he's got a really high score for that. He's got a genotype for increased risk for aspirin-induced asthma, and that's pretty much it. He doesn't have any other conditions that he's predisposed to. Okay. For APOB gene panel, no risk variants for familiar hypercholesterolemia. Pretty good to see. We're gonna skip all that. And for HLA, okay, hold on. No, for Canavan syndrome, no risk variants for Canavan syndrome. For HIV and AIDS panel, no protective evidence from HIV, which is bad. So he doesn't really have any protections from HIV. But that's typical. Like most people don't have any protective evidence here. So if he is exposed to HIV, he would have the typical amount of the viral load, and for typical stuff, HIV transitions into AIDS in around 1 year, 1 to 2 years. People who have the protective variants here, for them it takes a lot longer. So the survival rate without treatment is still like 0. But I'm saying the time it takes for HIV to transition into AIDS is a lot longer for people who have protective variants here. In his case, he doesn't have any protective variants, so he's cooked. For HLA gene panel, he's got lower odds of autoimmune disease. Really good to see. But if you look at the scores for intermediate and higher odds of autoimmune disease, these are very high percentages. So despite him having lower odds of autoimmune disease, and I feel like, hold on, let's look up multiple sclerosis. Yeah. So in the multiple sclerosis, he doesn't have any risk variants for HLA, and he's played the biggest role. These variants in in the multiple sclerosis panel have the biggest contribution to the HLA gene panel. So because of that, because he doesn't have any risk variants here, he's scoring really good for the HLA gene panel. He's scoring mostly lower odds of autoimmune disease, despite having risk variants in the HLA, the homozygous risk variants in the HLA for the vitiligo panel. But nonetheless, he has still got a very large percentage, 15.9% for highest odds of autoimmune disease. Nonetheless, it's much higher than what I score. I score like 1.8% for that, so it's a significant percentage. MTRR gene panel, he's scoring. He's got 2 risk variants for disorders intracellular colon metabolism here, and no risk variants anywhere else. Pretty good. And finally, we get to see the homocystinuria panel. Okay, that's actually the opposite of what I predicted. He's scoring intermediate or lower homocysteine levels, which is really good. So he's got some protection from increased homocysteine levels. Definitely really good to see that. Well, it makes sense because if you look at these 3 genotypes, all 3 of these genotypes lead to lower levels of homocysteine. So that's definitely really cool. Muscular dystrophy myopathies, no risk variance for that. No risk variance for ADL either. Really good to see. For color blindness panel, no risk variance for color blindness. For FTO gene panel, he is predisposed to intermediate odds of obesity, so he is not predisposed to being fat. Definitely really cool to see that. He's actually homozygous for fat gene variants here. And he is heterozygous here, and he's got lower odds of extreme. So it's kind of all over the place, but overall, if you take all of this into consideration, he has got intermediate odds of obesity. Pretty cool. For syncope panel, based on forest NPs, he's got pretty much average odds for syncope. Syncope, in case you don't know, is when you faint due to loss of blood flow to your brain. Biotraits panel. Let's see. Let's see. What can we talk about here? I want to talk about something. It looks like he's got dry earwax. Nobody. Oh wow, that's crazy. Likely Asian ancestry and reduced colostrum. This is actually one of the East Asian facial traits, East Asian genetic traits that he has. This is a very East Asian trait to have. Europeans have it at a very low frequency, and this genotype at a very low frequency, and it leads to drier earwax and reduced body odor. Definitely really cool. So this is an East Asian trait that this individual has. He's got 1 copy of the hunter-gatherer and 1 copy of the farmer variant in CTLC1, and it leads to an intermediate ability to process carbs and sugars. The farmer allele is C, definitely really cool. Okay, let's see what else. What else can we talk about here? We remember he was scoring very, very low for AMD. So, yeah, we see all these decreased odds for AMD, all these genotypes lead to decreased odds of AMD, which is really good. He's scoring high for cataracts, and we do see that here as well. Let's scroll back. Let's scroll through all of this. And for blood group, I'm just going to scroll from the entire page because there's nothing much to talk about. There's not that much interesting content for me to talk about here. And for blood group panel, it looks like his blood type is most likely type O. And that's pretty much it. For type A, there is a 23.8% likelihood for blood type A, but most likely his blood type is type O at 76.2% likelihood. Type B and type AB is pretty much out of the picture completely. There is no odds for type B or type AB blood type for him. Well, that was UOO033 from Sidielkina. From the I did not give you the time period. Yes, the time period is 63 centuries before the Common Era, which is 83 centuries before present. So this is the middle Mesolithic period. I sure hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed watching my content, and also make sure you check out the description of the video as well, because in the description of the video there will be links to download the raw DNA file that I was analyzing in this video, the actual DNA file of this sample in 23andMe format, and there will be also links to buy my software, which I use to generate these DNA reports that I made myself. I made this software myself. You can use the software in any microarray sequence file, in microarray sequence format file. You can 23andMe, MyHeritage, Ancestry, whatever, any file. It works on any file. And also there will be a link to buy a report. In case you don't want to buy the executable, you can buy a report for $4 from me. Once again, I can do a report for you. Well, thanks for watching the video until the very end. Once again, as I will remind you, leave a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Goodbye.